taking stock of how markets are looking this Monday morning, second week of trade of 2022, and the first week was not great at all. Rising interest rates continued to batter tech stocks on Friday, with the Nasdaq down almost 1%, 4.5% lower for the week for the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq was down, in fact, 0.9% to be specific. That's the worst week of trade, down 4.5% since February of 2021 for the Nasdaq. The Dow too was flat in trade, down 0.1%, but it was down relatively in a more tempered fashion, down just 0.3% for the week. The S&P 500 was also lower on Friday for the fourth consecutive day. For the first time since September of 2021, it was down around 0.4%. In fact, it was down almost 2% for the week as well. In terms of news, non-farm payroll rose 199,000 versus 422,000 expected by the Dow Jones. However, there is a positive with regard to unemployment. Unemployment is now down in the US at 3.9%. That's the lowest since February 2020. Of course, while tech stocks took a beating, value names, especially in energy and financials, showed some amount of resilience through the week. The US index futures directionally were pretty much in the same place. When I look at it pre-market today, the Dow futures is 0.1% lower. The S&P 500 futures is absolutely flat, and the Nasdaq futures is up just about 0.1% as well. So broadly quite flat after last week's fall, or rather despite last week's fall. When we look at how European indices performed at the close of last week, Europe saw the highest inflation ever on record. Preliminary data suggested that inflation in Europe came in at 5% year on year for the month of December, and that led indices mostly lower. The DAX was down over 0.5%. The CAC 40 was down around 0.4%, and the Stock 600 too was down around 0.4%. The only gainer was the FTSE. The UK index was up around 0.5% in trade on Friday. Asia too closed mixed last week, but in this week's trade, it's opened pretty much mixed as well, just as it had closed. The Nikkei is absolutely flat, down 3 basis points. The Shanghai is up over 0.1% in early trade. The Hang Seng is up around 0.75% in early trade, and the ASX 200 down 0.1%, while the Kospi is down over 1% in early trade this Monday. When we look at how the SGX Nifty is doing, surprisingly, it's up around 0.4% in early trade today, in what can be good cues for Indian markets broadly. When we look at how commodities have done on that side of things, commodities, oil closed just below the $79 a barrel mark in trade on Friday, and it's now just above that $78.5 a barrel mark. Gold closed again $17.96 an ounce on Fridays, opened pretty much just below that. Mind you, the dollar index was around 0.5% lower in trade on Friday, sharp fall there, and the dollar index has gained marginally at just below that 95.8 mark in early trade today. But the most telling story is the Treasury Yield story. It topped 1.8% on Friday, up almost 30 basis points, 0.3% since the start of last week, and the 10-year yield is currently sitting at 1.76%. So still really strong gains when we look at it broadly. 26 basis points in the last 1 week. That's the kind of gains you're looking at. The Bitcoin was below the 42,000 mark and has opened up at around $41,600 broadly. That's how it stands, the markets. And let's have a look at how this week of trade goes. Very interesting week in front of us.